Shalom from Yerushalayim. This is the last shir in the Haggadah before Leil Seder. Last time we left off with Maror zeh shana ochlim al shumah. Why do we eat the Maror on the Leil Seder? That's the easiest one to understand. Their lives had been unbelievably bitter until the year before, when the plagues really stopped. Well, the plagues started when the slavery stopped. And this year also, we have our feelings of bitterness, which are incorporated into the Seder as part of the reality that we're commemorating. Transition from slavery to freedom doesn't mean that you've lost the sense of tragedy that took place during the time of slavery. The Haggadah says, the Egyptians made the lives of our ancestors bitter. Shnema, as the pasuk says, the Egyptians embittered the lives of the Jews with hard work, with mortar and with bricks, all work of the field, all the work that they made them do with difficulty, with rigor, with exhaustion. Now, there is a sefer which analyzes this word parach in a very special way. The sefer asks the question, why do we say that Shabbos Kodesh is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim? In what way does Shabbos commemorate the Exodus from Egypt? This is a question which is asked by many Meforshim. And here's the answer that the author of this sefer gives. If you take the letters Pei, Reish, Chaf, and exchange them in the coding called Atbash. Atbash coding, which goes back to Chazal, is where you associate the Aleph with the Taf and the Beis with the Shin, first and last letters, second and next to last letters, and exchange them on the basis of that coding. So the Pei is 6 from the end, becomes a Vav. The Reish is 3 from the end, and becomes a Gimel. And then the Chaf is 12 from the end, so you have to go 13 from the beginning, which is a Lamed. And you get the letters Vav, Gimel, Lamed. That's what you get when you use the Atbash code. Now, take the gematria of those 3 letters. The Vav is 6, the Gimel is 3, and the Lamed is 30. 39, says this Sefer, these are the 39 malachos, the 39 types of physical activity which are forbidden on Shabbos. And the idea is that the Mitzrim, the Egyptians, caused our ancestors in Egypt to perform all 39 types of this type of physical labor. And when we rest on Shabbos, we're resting on Shabbos from precisely the service that the Egyptians required us to do in Egypt. Okay, now it's time for a quiz. It's especially for the Talmidei Chachamim in the audience. What is this sefer? Where is such an idea brought? That there's the Atbash and there's the Gematria, and means that there were 39 malachas in Mitzrayim and 39 malachas later that we don't do on Shabbos. That's how it's commemorated. What type of author would write that kind of idea? So if those of you who may have certain preconceived ideas will associate this with the Hasidic movement, we'll take it, because it's Tosfos and Arbe Psochim Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Look it up. And yes, we will accept Tosfos as a Hasidic sefer, no problem. This is the idea that what happened in Egypt was a foundation from which the future could be projected. You take that which was devoted as slavery and you turn it into freedom, because after all, the 39 malachas of Shabbos are based on the 39 malachas that we use to make the Mishkan. So the very same activities that we used to serve the Egyptians, those activities could be used to serve a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And those activities are the ones which are forbidden on Shabbos, because we have to know that in Shabbos we already have everything that we could accomplish by building the Mishkan. At any rate, that's the source of this idea of Dubahem before. Now the next paragraph is the expression directly of what we've said in several of the shiurim, that you're supposed to re-experience the Exodus from Egypt in this performance of the experiencing of the words in the Haggadah. And watch how the Haggadah here carefully defines the point. The first statement is, in every generation, a person has to look upon himself as if he went out of Egypt. As if. The words as if still carry the implication it isn't really true. It's only as if. Okay. As if means import from that historical reality some element, some dimension, some aspect, perhaps you could apply. This as if is the basis of the following verse. This is what Hashem did for me when I left Egypt. I say that verse to my son and explaining to him why we are performing the mitzvahs of this time. And I say it, says the Haggadah, up to this point, as if I was also there. But now the Haggadah goes further, takes a step further. Shelo es avoseinu bilvad go'al HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not just our ancestors. Don't say, historically, our ancestors were there. Historically, HaKadosh Baruch Hu took our ancestors out. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took our ancestors out. And then it's left some kind of roshim, some kind of application on our lives. No, don't say that. It wasn't just our ancestors that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took out. Ela'af osanu go'al imahem. We too experienced that geula with them. Shneimar go'osanu hotzi misham. We say these words. We were taken out of Egypt. In order to give us the land which HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised to our ancestors. So this is a real experiential identity that for each person there is a Yetzias Mitzrayim. Now, I don't think it's difficult. I don't think it's difficult to appreciate if you think about your own lives, individually and collectively. Very often in life there are barriers. The word Meitzar means barrier. It means a wall. It means an enclosure. Mitzrayim was a place that was walled, enclosed. The Medrash says it was famous, no slave ever escaped from Egypt. Never. Not until the exodus of the Jewish people, but before that, it was impossible to get out. And there are times in life when you look around you and you see yourself hemmed in, you see forces arranged against you, external forces and internal forces. There are our own psychological barriers. There are promptings of the Yetzer Hara that are very difficult to overcome. And sometimes it looks hopeless. And that's a time to turn to Kadosh Baruch Hu and say, look, this is what you did for our ancestors. It looked hopeless. It looked impossible. No one in the world could have dreamt that from the time that Moshe Rabbeinu arrived in Egypt, a year later, the Jews would be marching out, heads held high. So likewise in our lives, there are times when it's hard to appreciate that we'll ever escape from the forces that are operating against us. And we have to know that it is possible. And that in the Leila Seder, going through it, reading what happened to us and them together, identifying with it, experiencing it is also a key for the forces above to break down the barriers that are in front of us. And we all know that we're facing terrible challenges, terrible crushing blows that the world is taking and the Jewish people is taking befrat. And we have to approach the Leila Seder with the Amunah and the Bitachon that this can be a key to turning things around. Now I got to say something very, shall I say, almost it forces thinking. Lefichach, therefore, therefore, we are required to give praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all the great wonders that He did for us. What does the therefore go on? From what in the previous paragraph are we taking the therefore? It sounds like the emphasis in the previous paragraph is we were there. It happened to us personally. It's not just a historical event. Therefore, we are supposed to give praise. And if we didn't have this link, if it wasn't as if we personally had been there, then somehow we would have been crippled. We wouldn't have been able to give Shevach. We say Hallel throughout the year, say Hallel on various events that took place historically, without any description of us having been there, identifying with what had happened. There, it seems like we say Hallel because these events took place and in the historical development shaped our present historical reality, and therefore we say Hallel. But there's a deep meaning here. This I heard from my teacher, Rabbi Moshe Meiselman. I think it's an extremely important thing to point out. Everybody knows the famous Chazal that when the Kriyas Yamsuf took place, when the Jews went through the sea and the Egyptians were drowned, that the angels wanted to sing God's praises. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to them, Masei Yadai Tovim B'yam, the work of my hands are drowning in the water, and you want to sing my praises, thereby silencing the angels. The Egyptians are drowning, and therefore the angels are silenced. Well, the Jewish people did say Shira. We did sing God's praises. Az Yashir Moshe is the song of the sea, and we recite, but it's written in the Torah, we recite it every morning in the davening. So what's the difference between us and the Malachim? And worse than that, I should say in addition to that, the later generations, we don't say full Hallel on the 7th day of Pesach, which is the anniversary of the crossing of the sea. There are 3 reasons for that. And one of the reasons brought down is because the Egyptians did die. And therefore, our praise too should be muted in some respect. So what's the difference between us at the sea on the one hand, and on the other hand, the angels and us in future generations? And based on a Rambam, Rabbi Eisman pointed out that Shira has 2 applications. Shira is a performance that exists in 2 dimensions. One dimension is Shevach, praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the other dimension is Hodoya, is gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu from what you received from the event. And in fact, if you will take a look at Targum Onkelos, Az Yashir Moshe B'nai Yisrael Zashir Azos Leimor, Ashir Al Hashem Ki Gogo'ah, the word shir appears there 3 times, and the first 2 times Onkelos translates Tushbachta, just praise, and the 3rd time he translates Tushbachta Vodoya, praise and thanksgiving. So Onkelos, I don't know why the first 2 times it's single and the 3rd time it's the double, but that's what Onkelos translates. So Rabbi Meisel explained it as follows, based on this Rambam. Take a look at the sea, where the event took place. The angels could only be involved in praise. That's canceled by Masei Yadai Tovim B'yam. Since the Egyptians are being drowned in the sea, praise for the event isn't appropriate as a pure praise performance, because part of what's going on is, let's say, secondary and second best in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hopes for the world. But if you are the recipient of the event, if the performance of shir for you is also thanksgiving, that trumps Maaseh Yadai Tovim B'Yam. And therefore you have a right, I would say more than that, an obligation to say the Shira, to express your gratitude to Kodesh Baruch Hu. So the key to saying the praise is the fact that for you, it's also gratitude. Now, in later generations, the Jewish people stand as the historical inheritors of that great event on the seventh day of Pesach. They're not expressing direct gratitude. They're expressing only praise. That means they are now relegated to the position of the angels. And since it's only praise, they can't say it because of Maaseh Yadai Tovim B'Yam, because Kodesh Baruch Hu lost his investment in the Egyptians because they were drowned. Okay, now let's take all of that information and apply it to the night of the Seder. What's going on in the night of the Seder? Well, the Egyptian firstborn were killed. Isn't that Maaseh Yadai Tovim B'Yam? Why doesn't the deaths of the Egyptians stand in the way of saying Hallel on the first night of Seder, just as it stands in the way of saying Hallel on the seventh day of Pesach? The answer is the paragraph we just read. Because we're not saying Hallel at the Seder as a historical reference. We're saying Hallel because we ourselves were enslaved and we ourselves experienced the liberation and we received our freedom at that time. So we have also Hakaras HaTov. We also have gratitude for the benefit that Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us, and that trumps Maaseh Yadai Tovim B'Yam. The fact that there's this loss to Kodesh Baruch Hu for the respect to saying Shira is trumped by the fact that we personally were involved. Osana Otzimisa, Loas Havasena Bilvad. Not just our ancestors, we too were there. And that's what enables us to say the Shira on Leil HaSeder. And that's why the Haggadah says Lefichach. The Lefichach is because we were there, we can say the Shira, otherwise we wouldn't be able to say it. It would be like the seventh day of Pesach. Now comes Hallel. Now, as everybody knows, you have the first two paragraphs of Hallel, and then you have the meal, and after the meal, you finish Hallel. The question is raised in the commentaries. You're interrupting the middle of Hallel. How do you do that? Normally, no interruption is tolerated. Even if you don't say a bracha on Hallel, the formal bracha on Hallel we don't say. Sheikh Shabbos is one of the Kuras of Hallel. Still, you don't interrupt. And the answer is that since the whole performance is a reenactment, a reliving of what happened to them on that first Seder, 3,300 plus years ago, and they also sat down to have the Pesach, the Korban Pesach, the Paschal sacrifice, and the matzah and the Maror, and to eat a meal. When we do that, we are continuing the same process of reliving the events. And that's not a hefsek. It's not an interruption in the performance. It's an interruption in the recital of the words of Hallel. The words of Hallel themselves are geared into the larger performance of re-experiencing the Exodus. In that sense, it's not interruption. Now, I'd like to spend some time on the first paragraph of Hallel. This is Psalm 113. I think there are very, very deep ideas here. And since we'll say Hallel, some more, but you say that in Shul, the night of the Seder, say it at the Seder, say it the next morning, the rest of the Chatzi Hallel for the rest of the days. I think it'd be worthwhile to probe with some depth what this particular first paragraph of Hallel has to teach us. Of course, on the surface, I'm not getting to the bottom of anything. Not Tanakh and not Chazal, but some ideas from the surface. First of all, it divides up into, it's nine psukim, 9 verses. It divides up into 3 verses of 3. The first speak about praising Kodesh Baruch Hu. Praise Hashem, servants of Hashem, praise Hashem's name. Hashem's name should be praised from now forever, from the rising of the sun to the setting of the sun. Those 3 verses talk about praising Hashem. The next three talk about Hashem being above and beyond our world. Rama Kol Goy, above all the nations. Allah Shamayim Kvodo, his glory is on the heavens, not in the heavens. Adarabba, Mika Hashem Elokeinu Hamagdi L'Shav. This was like Hashem, our God, who dwells on high. Hamashpili L'Oz B'Shamayim Abaretz, who lowers himself to observe the heavens and the earth. If you have this picture of God living in heaven, leave that with the fairy tales of a 6-year-old. Now, that's the second three. And the last three are a description of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does from that position of ultimate transcendence. Ultimate transcendence pictures HaKadosh Baruch Hu above the world, beyond the world, guiding the world from its inception, from its creation, to its ultimate goal. What is he doing from there? Well, he raises up the poor from the dirt, from the trash heaps. He leaves up, raises up destitute, to place him with, the correct translation here is philanthropists, not princes. It doesn't say Sar. It says Medivim, Medivei Amo, the philanthropist of his nation. Moshiv Yekeres Abayis takes the barren mother, the barren woman, and brings her as the head of the household. Ema Bani Smecha gives her children. So I want to make a couple of minor comments on the phraseology before, and then I'll come to the last three verses, which I think is extremely important. First of all, why does it say, Hallel Avdei Hashem? The servants of Hashem should praise him. Shouldn't everybody praise him? Are the servants of Hashem somehow singled out for a special quality of praise? Here, I want to press into service a certain philosophical idea, which is not well known, and will strike some of you as intuitively impossible to accept. I'll explain to you why it has traction, why it has purchase. Praise. Is praise something objective or subjective? When you praise something, are you simply expressing that you like it, that you're impressed by it? Or does praise have some objective quality where, and this is the test of objectivity, where when someone praises something, you could say, no, that's a mistake. What you're saying is incorrect. That's the test of objectivity. Almost everyone will tell you that praise is subjective. Just a question of how you feel about it. Let me show you that that's not true. Imagine someone who's never heard of, never observed basketball. So you say, wow, you're living in Central Australia, totally cut off for the rest of humanity. I'll show you something. You take them to the basketball court and you say, we're going to see a game. And you see them, the players sort of warming up on the court. Suddenly, your friend grabs your sleeve and he says, wow, did you see that? I just saw something amazing, something great. This guy jumped into the air and threw the ball into the hoop. What a great shot. He made a jump shot from the foul line. So you say to him, don't get so excited. Most high school kids can do that. That's not a great shot. Maybe in the course of the game, we'll see 1 or 2 great shots. But that wasn't a great shot. What's happening? He praised it, and you're telling him he's wrong. Well, he is wrong. It wasn't a great shot. One of the features of great things is that they're not common. They're not everyday. They're not something that everybody can do, which means there are standards for what can be called great and can't be called great. Now the question will be, what are the standards and how do you arrive at them? So John Stuart Mill suggested the following. Let's take 2 items in the same category and imagine that everyone who's capable of understanding both of them prefers the same particular one of them. Let's take Beethoven and the Beatles. I hope this isn't a difficult example. I think it's obviously true. Anyone who understands, who can appreciate, can show you that they can analyze and interpret Beethoven and the Beatles will prefer Beethoven to the Beatles. John Stuart Mill said, under those conditions, Beethoven is objectively better than the Beatles. Where does the objectivity show? Well, imagine you're someone who likes the Beatles, and when you listen to Beethoven, you don't get it. It just sounds like boring noise. You reflect to yourself, there are millions of people in the world who understand both. And all of them, without exception, prefer Beethoven. Well, I'm not so different from those millions of people. I also have ears. I also have a brain. I also can tell the difference between a tune and a non-tune. Probably, if I would invest the time and effort to come to understand Beethoven, I too would appreciate Beethoven more than the Beatles. I too would enrich my life with something which I would appreciate much more than the Beatles. The fact that everyone who experiences both chooses the same one as superior means that that's a reality for other people also who could learn to enrich their lives in that. So the praise of something depends upon your ability to understand it, to analyze it, to appreciate its structure and its applications. If you don't understand it, you may very well not appreciate it, and you may very well not like it and not want to participate in it. But that's only because of a lack of your understanding. That means praise ultimately is objective. Now, who can praise something? The ones who are closest to it, the ones who know it best, who understand it best. Hallel Avdei Hashem. The people who are servants of Hakadosh Baruch Hu are the ones who can utter praise. They can issue praise. We can listen to them. We can say, when they say it, that makes it certainly the most appropriate thing for us to do, and therefore we can imitate them. But to do it on our own will be very difficult. And this is why, when we say Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzvakos, we say, just as the angels say these words, so we say them also. Why are we citing the angels? The pasuk in Yeshai. Why not? Why not just use the pasuk? Because we're explaining why we're saying them. The angels who perceive a Kadosh Baruch Hu in ways much higher than we do, they said these words. That's how we know they're appropriate words to say. So when it says Hallel Avdei Hashem, it's not a giveaway. It's not a throwaway. It means that the Avdei Hashem are the ones who are the ones who are really qualified to praise. Then it says Hashem's name should be praised from now and forever, from the rising of the sun to the setting of the sun. Is that redundant? From now and forever, and also from morning till evening. Isn't that included in from now and forever? The simple answer is the rising of the sun here doesn't refer to time, it refers to space. Rising and setting mean east and west. So the previous one says from now and forever, covering all time. And the second says from east to west, covering all geography, all time, and all space. Then comes the fact that Hakadosh Baruch Hu transcends. Many people look for meaning in life, and they find it by identifying with their national group and the fortunes of the national group and dedicating themselves to improve the life of the nation. And that's not wrong. It's not wrong. It's just truncated. It's cut off from the ultimate identification. Here we're being told that a person who identifies with his national group has lost the ultimate root of things. He's lost the ultimate identification. That's the creator of the universe, whose existence and essence transcend the whole of the creation, including the fortunes of nations. And now, from that point of transcendence, overlooking the entire creation, what does the Hakadosh Baruch Hu do? The last three verses, in general, say that he helps people in need. That in itself is a tremendous lesson. There's a Chazal that says that Hakadosh Baruch Hu's anova shows itself in the Torah, in the Nevi'im, in the Ksuvim. And what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's anova? Anova is sometimes translated as humility, and it has many different applications. It's a very, very subtle concept in the Tanakh and Chazal. It shows itself in his application to the fortunes of the least considered, the levels of society which people regard as the lowest levels of society, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with the person who's broken in spirit, who's brokenhearted. That's what shows his another. So in general, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with those who are on the bottom of the social heap, they're not on the bottom of the spiritual heap, and they're Kodesh Baruch Hu's primary concern. But there's much more detail. First of all, it says Kodesh Baruch Hu picks people up out of poverty, me'afar, me'ashpos, from the dirt, from the trash heaps, those who are impoverished. Lo shivi, to set them in the divim. And I told you that the divim, the correct translation is philanthropist. Now, poverty and philanthropy aren't obvious opposites. It isn't obvious that that's the contrast to poverty. Conscious of poverty is either wealth or at least sufficiency. Why would David HaMelech say that he's going to take those who are impoverished and put them together with the philanthropists? And then the last verse describes childlessness, where the woman who has no children will finally give birth to children. Why are these two unfortunates chosen? There are lots of people who are unfortunate, lots of people who are suffering, lots of people who need help, need salvation. Why are these two particular unfortunates chosen? There's a chazal. I'll say that there are four groups of people. I'm going to translate the meaning. Four groups of people whose lives aren't fully expressive. There's something about their lives which is missing, lacking, something crucial. Who are they? They're the poor and the blind, the childless, and the person with saras, which isn't leprosy. Saras is a skin condition that took place at the times of Chazal and the times of the people in the land of Israel. Those four categories of people are as if they're not fully alive. Why? What do they have in common? What they have in common, say the commentators, is this. They don't have the normal range of opportunities to do chesed, to practice loving kindness with other people. They don't have the normal range of opportunities to practice loving kindness with other people. And that's all four categories. And then it's two subcategories of two each. One subcategory is where the lack of opportunity is from a lack of resources. And the other subcategory is where the lack of opportunity is due to a lack of opportunity. Let's see how it works. A poor person can do loving kindness. There are many ways in which you can help other people. But when there was that giant snowstorm in New York, and there were people who put up 30, 40, 50 people in their houses and fed them, a poor person can't do that. He can do other things, but that he can't do. He can't go out of his SUV to the airport and bring people home and care for them in that way. Similarly, a blind person, there are many wonderful things that a blind person can do for other people, but he can't offer a lift in his car. Okay, if you have self-driving cars, even there, better to keep your eyes on the road. And can't help you redecorate your living room and choose colors and so forth and so on. Read to you a note which you are handed by the teller of the bank. There's certain things that blind people can't do to help other people, and in certain ways they're dependent upon other people. So a poor person and a blind person lacks the normal range of opportunities to practice loving kindness. Parents know that when you have children, children call forth in the parents resources of loving kindness that usually the person had no clue existed. I remember myself times when our little children were in pain. We had one child who had colic for 10 days, 12 days. You should never know from colic. The child can scream for 18 hours a day. And in my time anyway, there was nothing to do for it. You pick up the child, and you carry the child, you sing to the child, and you bounce the child. You don't think in the middle, I'll never get up tomorrow morning, I'm going to be so tired. Boy, I wish this weren't happening. You don't experience irritation. What you experience is, my child is in pain. I have to do something, whatever I can. That outpouring of love and care and kindness and identification is something which having children reveals in a person, draws out of a person, and it's an experience of self-revelation. You see for yourself the kind of quality of loving kindness that you yourself possess, which you might not have known. I certainly didn't know it when I spent the night hours carrying the child who was screaming. So the childless woman, especially a woman who doesn't have that opportunity to show loving kindness to her own offspring, to her own flesh and blood, that person is lacking one of the crucial applications of loving kindness to your own children. And that being the case, there's the range of opportunities for loving kindness is missing. And the same is true, of course, for a person with tzaras. A person with tzaras is expelled from the city, has to dwell in the countryside alone. Badad, the same word being used for our condition, bidud, in Eretz Israel and in America, isolation, quarantine. If someone approaches this person in the countryside who has tzaras, he has to call out to them, "Tame, tame, don't come close, don't become defiled like me." So he also is cut off from people. He's cut off from his ability to do loving kindness to others. So the Talmud says these four categories who lack the normal range of opportunities, two because of a lack of resources, and two because of a lack of opportunities, these four have something crucial missing from their lives because they can't do loving kindness for others. Notice that in the Hallel here, Dovid HaMelech picks one out of each of the two subcategories. He chooses the poor out of the subcategory of those who lack the resources, and he chooses the childless, the subcategory of those who lack the opportunities. And one could say, very simply, that he chose the one that's more common. Poverty is more common than blindness, and lack of children, infertility is much more common than tzaras. In our time, tzaras doesn't exist at all. And I'm sure even in ancient times, childlessness was more common than tzaras condition. So Dovid HaMelech is really making reference to these four categories and to the concept that's behind it. Okay, now let's push a little deeper. The Gemara's statement is their lives lack something essential. The commentators identify the missing element as loving kindness. Why would that category, that particular quality, be described as a lack of life? There are many things that people need, that many qualities of life which are important, which should be developed. If we lack them, it doesn't call it lack of life. Only this is called a lack of life. The answer is because loving kindness is the source of the entire creation. Olam Chesed Yiboneh. Kadosh Baruch Hu's quality with which he creates the world, present tense, is loving kindness, and only loving kindness. Everything comes from there. Every other quality associated with the Kadosh Baruch Hu is only an application of loving kindness. Otherwise, it couldn't exist. So, when you practice loving kindness, it's mahu afato. You're acting out Kadosh Baruch Hu's will in the world, his presence in the world, his maintenance of the world. All of it is an expression of loving kindness. And when you act out the Kadosh Baruch Hu's role in the world, you are realizing your essential life. And if you don't have that, then you don't have that essential life. That's what the Gemara is saying on the surface. I'm talking about what it says in the depth. But that's what the Gemara is saying. So now, let's go back again to the verses. It says the Kadosh Baruch Hu raises up the poor from poverty to fit them with the philanthropists. Do we understand now why that's the contrast? What is the spiritual demerit, the spiritual loss in being poor? It's a lack of resources to do chesed, to do loving kindness. That's what's wrong with being poor. I can't help people as much as I could help them if I had more resources. So the contrast is, here's a person whose resources for chesed, for loving kindness, are truncated, are minimized. Now I'm going to put him in a position where he can do spectacular loving kindness. I put him together with a philanthropist. Dovid HaMelech's contrast between the poor and the philanthropist is very easy to understand now. And then the message of the verses is that when Kodesh Baruch Hu cares for people in this condition, it's not just that they have needs and he's fulfilling their needs, helping them, supporting them. He's giving them life. He's making them live, because life really is loving kindness. That's the full expression of life. These lack the resources to do the loving kindness, and he gives that to them. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is pictured as doing from a position of transcendence, observing from the creation to the ultimate fruition of the world. That's the activity that he's doing, providing us with the opportunity to live real life. The real life means to do in the world what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing in the world. That's an introduction, just a little bit, what Dovid HaMelech is saying. Now, the story is told that maybe 120 years ago, 130, 40 years ago, the Ger Rebbe of that time told his Hasidim on Rosh Hashanah that if this year on Sukkot, when you say Hallel, when you say Honor Hashem, and you have in mind all the things that you need, I promise you that you'll have them. Wow. You can imagine what Hallel was like in the Ger Shtibelach all over the world. When they were saying Hallel, the roof was shaking. Several months later, two elder Ger Hasidim were talking, and one said to the other, I have a confession to make. I'm sure that I followed the Rebbe's instruction. I definitely had all my needs in mind with Ana Hashem. Nothing happened. I didn't see any change. And the other said, I had the same experience. Now, if you wanted to get some further insights, what you would do is go to the Gabbai. Going to the Rebbe wasn't so easy, and there are certain complications, but you could go to the Gabbai. And the Gabbai will be able to explain it to you. So they went to the Gabbai. He said to them, oh, so you followed the Rebbe's instruction. In which verse of Hallel did you have in mind what you need? And they said, the Rebbe said, Ana Hashem Oshiano, Ana Hashem Hatzlichano, please Hashem save us, please Hashem make us successful. Oh no, said that the Gabbai. It's the wrong verse. Ana Hashem doesn't appear only there. Actually, it appears in two other places in Hallel. The one that the Rebbe meant was, Ana Hashem ki ani avdecha. Ana Hashem, for I am your servant. That's what the Rebbe meant. What's the difference? The difference is gigantic. Ana Hashem Moshiano, Ana Hashem Atzlichano pictures me as in need. And yes, Kodesh Baruch Hu is running the world. Everything is Hashgacha Pratis. And for the aficionados, that's not controversial. For those of you who think that only certain Jews give Hashgacha Pratis, both the Rambam and the Ramban and all the other Sfarim agree, and you can't escape it because reward and punishment is definitely Hashgacha Pratis. Everyone gets that individually. Think about that. There can't be people abandoned and not treated personally and individually with respect to every one of the pratim of their lives. But at any rate, the picture is I'm in need, and Kodesh Baruch Hu is running the world, and I'm asking him for help. Ana Hashem ki ani avdecha is an entirely different sentiment. It's I'm in the world to serve you. That's why I'm here. That's what I'm doing here. I'm asking you for help because I want to serve you. What am I asking for in particular? Those items that will be means by which I can serve you. That's all I'm asking for. I don't have any independent standing in the world. Ana Hashem Oshiano, Ana Haslichano could mean I'm running a corporation and I'm running out of money to pay off the loans and I'm worried about being bankrupt. Please help me stay in business. That has nothing to do with my goals and purposes. It's just I'm in need and I'm asking for help. Ana Hashem ki ani avdecha is an entirely different sentiment. And this is where our tefillas ought to be. The tefillas that we have in Shemona Esrei, all the bakashas in Shemona Esrei, we should imagine ourselves that we're standing before the Kisei HaKavod Kodesh Baruch Hu is listening to us, and I come to the Bakasha and I ask the Kodesh Baruch Hu for X, and the Malach stops me and says, "Why do you want X? What for?" I should have an answer ready, because I want to serve a Kodesh Baruch Hu in this way, and I need this item to be able to serve him in that way. That kind of Bakasha is much more likely to be accepted and answered positively than any other type of Bakasha. And I will end with the last idea about Bakasha. The structure of the Shemona Esrei is Shevach, Bakasha, and Hodoah. First we praise the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and then we ask the Kodesh Baruch Hu for our needs, and then we express gratitude. Now, the order isn't obvious. If you're coming before a king, and you need, and you're going to ask him for help, you praise him first as a way of recognizing who he is, who you are, and how you're related. Wouldn't it be appropriate to express gratitude now for all the things he's done for you in the past, and then ask for something for the future? Why would the gratitude come at the end? I learned the Daf Yomi, and I learned it in the Shas Lublin. They bring down quotations from Achronim. I saw the name of the Shloah HaKadosh, that every bakasha that you make, if you make it sincerely, is always answered yes. Always. Maybe not yes right away. Maybe not yes in the exact way in which you asked for it, the exact form. Maybe yes for your grandchildren, but no, bakasha has answered no. Everyone has answered yes. So, what's happening in the Shemona Esrei is this. You praise the Kodesh Baruch Hu, you make your requests, and then you're expressing gratitude. You're saying thank you for answering your requests now positively. That's what you're saying thank you for. Not for things that happened 6 months ago, or maybe that could be included. But you're also saying thank you for the requests that you made now that were answered yes. That's why it's at the end. I read this in the Shloah Kodesh. I've said it over many times. 7 years ago, I was doing the Daf Yomi, that cycle. I realized it's an explicit Gemara in Brachos, and it's brought in the Shulchan Aruch. When you take 3 steps back after the end of the Shemona Esrei, what is your attitude? What are you experiencing? Says the Gemara, Ke'eved amakabel pras mirabo, like a servant who has received a gift from his master. That's it, word for word. You're stepping back as one who's received the gift from the master. It's not just that the interview is over, there's no more time for you, he's going back to work, get out of his office. No, you received it. If you received it, that means you should have expressed gratitude for what you got. This now makes a gigantic difference. When you're davening the Shemona Esrei, when you're saying the bakashas, and you think to yourself, this could do it. This could make the difference. The Kodesh Baruch Hu is listening. If I make the bakasha with all my strength, with all my meaning, with all my intention, this could be the difference between having it and not having it. The bakasha becomes a different bakasha, because if it's made in the appropriate way, then you're guaranteed the answer is going to be yes. Kodesh Baruch Hu should give us the bakashas that we are making, especially the bakashas for health, the bakashas for life and death, which is on everybody's mind now. And Kodesh Baruch Hu should protect us, all of us, and those who are alone, as I am this Pesach. Those who are alone should feel comfort. Remember, we're not alone. No Jew is ever alone. The smallest number in life is not 1. The smallest number in life is 2. Because the Kodesh Baruch Hu is always there. We should all be able not only to accomplish Shivisi Hashem Nedeg B'Samid, but to take comfort from Shivisi Hashem Nedeg B'Samid. The Kodesh Baruch Hu should say die to all the tzaras of Klal Yisrael, and we should be able to celebrate together with Bias HaMashiach with Heber Yamein.